It is kind of like a new world begins. There's a reason NASA trains astronauts for future Mars missions in Antarctica. It's basically another planet down there.
Antarctica is the biggest, driest, coldest, and loneliest desert in the world. It is a place with all time zones but with no permanent citizens. A land so vast that it is almost twice the size of Australia, yet it is home to more penguins than people. A place where temperatures can plummet to minus 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit, making it the coldest place on Earth. But did you know that hidden beneath its icy surface are some of the strangest discoveries ever made? Blood Waterfall. Blood Falls is one of the most bizarre and fascinating phenomena in Antarctica. Located in the McMurdo Dry Valleys, this blood-red waterfall seeps out of the Taylor Glacier, which stains the ice and snow around it. The crimson-colored water flows against the white landscape to create an otherworldly sight that appears like blood is pouring out from somewhere. This place has intrigued scientists and explorers for over a century. Blood Falls was first discovered in 1911 by the Australian geologist Griffith Taylor during the British Antarctic expedition. At first glance, the sight of red water oozing from the glacier was puzzling and seemed almost supernatural. Early explorers and researchers were baffled by this strange occurrence, and it quickly became the subject of numerous theories. For years, people wondered what could cause such a strange phenomenon. Some thought it might be due to red algae, while others believed it was the work of some unknown organism or a mysterious chemical reaction. It even led to the formation of some legends and myths. Some even suggested it was evidence of extraterrestrial life or a portal to another dimension. However, the true explanation behind Blood Falls is something else. You see, the red color of the water is actually due to iron oxide, commonly known as rust. The water that feeds Blood Falls originates from a subglacial lake that has been trapped beneath the ice for millions of years. This ancient reservoir is rich in iron and devoid of oxygen. As the iron-rich water makes its way to the surface through small fissures in the glacier, it comes into contact with the oxygen in the air. This reaction causes the iron to oxidize, which gives the water its striking red hue. This means Blood Falls is a natural process similar to the rusting of metal, but on a grand and visually dramatic scale. Other than its striking appearance, Blood Falls has given scientists so many samples of ancient ecosystems that once thrived on Earth. The microbes found in the subglacial lake have adapted to survive in harsh, oxygen-free conditions, and this has provided valuable insights into how life can persist in extreme environments. While this fascinating phenomenon came from the deep underground of the Antarctic, the next one came from the skies. Ancient meteorite Antarctica is famous for its ice and cold. But did you know it is also a great place for finding meteorites? These ancient space rocks have been landing on Earth for billions of years, and Antarctica's icy landscape is the perfect place to find them. The story of meteorites in Antarctica starts in 1912. Francis Bickerton and his team were exploring Adélie Land when they found a rock that later turned out to be a meteorite. After that, in 1969, a team of Japanese scientists made a big discovery on the Yamato Glacier. They found 9 meteorites just lying there on the ice. This sparked a lot of interest, and since then, scientists from all over the world have been searching for meteorites in Antarctica. Today, over 50,000 meteorites have been found there, making it one of the best places on Earth to find these space rocks. But why are so many meteorites found in Antarctica? The continent's ice sheets play a big role. When meteorites fall on the ice, they get buried and preserved. Over time, the ice moves and carries the meteorites with it. When the ice reaches mountain ranges or other barriers, it gets compressed and eroded, leaving the meteorites exposed on the surface. The white ice makes it easy to spot the dark meteorites. Some of the meteorites found in Antarctica are really famous. One of the most well-known is the Allen Hills 84001, discovered in 1984. This meteorite came from Mars and is about 4.1 billion years old. In 1996, NASA scientists said it might have tiny fossils of ancient Martian life. This claim is still debated, but the meteorite remains an important piece of scientific research. Another important meteorite is the Yamato 691, found in 1969, which was found by the same Japanese team that we discussed before. This meteorite also came from Mars and has given scientists lots of information about the planet's geology and history. Then there is the Miller Range 05029, found in 2005. It is one of the oldest meteorites ever found, dating back about 4.6 billion years, which is almost as old as the solar system itself. Studying these meteorites helps scientists learn about the early solar system. They contain clues about how planets formed and what the conditions were like billions of years ago. These meteorites are one major reason why scientists love exploring Antarctica. Sometimes what they find is interesting and fascinating, but sometimes it is utterly horrifying. A frozen ship. Scientists made an incredible discovery deep in the icy waters of the Weddell Sea. They found a frozen ship. And not just any frozen ship, they found the frozen ship of Sir Ernest Shackleton, the Endurance. This ship was lost for over a century, and now it has been found almost perfectly preserved. And as expected, it has unlocked a legendary chapter in the history of Antarctic exploration. The Endurance was part of the Imperial Transantarctic Expedition led by Sir Ernest Shackleton in 1914. Shackleton and his 27-man crew, including Captain Frank Worsley and photographer Frank Hurley, set out to be the first to cross Antarctica from sea to sea. But unfortunately, the Endurance became trapped in the thick pack ice of the Weddell Sea in January 1915. For months, the crew lived on the drifting ice, surviving the brutal Antarctic conditions. The Endurance was eventually crushed by the ice and sank in November 1915, leaving the men stranded. Despite the dire circumstances, Shackleton's leadership and the crew's resilience led to an incredible survival story. They embarked on a perilous journey to Elephant Island, and eventually Shackleton and a small team sailed over 800 miles in a lifeboat to South Georgia Island to get help. Remarkably, all crew members were rescued without any loss of life. For over a century, the exact location of the Endurance remained one of the greatest mysteries of Antarctic exploration. That mystery was finally solved in March 2022 by the Endurance 22 expedition. The team used advanced underwater drones and sonar technology to locate the wreck of the Endurance nearly 10,000 feet below the surface of the Weddell Sea. The discovery was nothing short of extraordinary. The Endurance was found upright and largely intact, as it was preserved by the cold, dark waters. This preservation allowed researchers to uncover a wealth of artifacts, including personal items, tools, and even photographic negatives stored by Frank Hurley. The discovery of the Endurance has not only solved a long-standing mystery, but has also provided a tangible connection to one of the greatest survival stories in history. Did you know the Endurance was not the only fascinating thing belonging to Shackleton that was found near Antarctica? 100-year-old whiskey. In 2010, conservationists made a truly remarkable discovery beneath the floorboards of Ernest Shackleton's abandoned expedition base in Antarctica. They found 3 bottles of rare 19th century Scotch whiskey. These bottles were part of a stash that had been left behind during Shackleton's 1907 Nimrod expedition. It is purely mind-blowing to think that these bottles had been buried in the ice for over a century. The bottles were still intact, and researchers could hear the whiskey sloshing around inside, despite being frozen solid in the ice. Even though temperatures in Antarctica can plunge to -90 degrees Celsius, it was not cold enough to freeze the whiskey. Turns out the whiskey had been bottled in 1898 by Mackinlay's distillery after aging for 15 years. Alongside the Scotch, they found 2 crates of brandy. Shackleton's Nimrod expedition did not reach the South Pole, but did set a record for reaching the farthest southern latitude at the time. The fact that this whiskey survived all these years shows that the conditions of Antarctica might be harsh, but they were also preserving. These bottles did not just stay in Antarctica, though. They were flown to Scotland by White and Mackay, the company that now owns the McKinley brand. Using a private jet, the bottles were transported from the Antarctic Operations Headquarters in Christchurch, New Zealand, to Scotland for detailed analysis in 2011. The goal was to recreate the lost recipe of this historic blend. The team carefully drew a sample from one of the bottles using a syringe through the cork. This sample allowed master blenders to analyze and replicate the whiskey, and then they came up with a limited edition of 50,000 bottles. Each bottle was sold for about $157, and a portion of the proceeds went to the Antarctic Heritage Trust, which supported their ongoing conservation efforts. New Zealand Prime Minister John Key himself returned the original bottles to Antarctica in 2011. The bottles were transported in 2 combination-lock containers and flown back to Shackleton's hut on Ross Island by a U.S. Air Force transport plane. The bottles were eventually returned to their original spot beneath the floorboards at Cape Royds as part of a program to preserve the legacy of the heroic era of Antarctic exploration. Shackleton's hut is a piece of history, and now the whiskey that once warmed the hearts of explorers is back where it belongs. But it is not just the non-living, harmless things found in the harsh climate of Antarctica. There are scary living creatures lurking in that territory as well. A scary creature. Deep in the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, scientists stumbled upon a big scary creature that looked like it crawled out of a nightmare. Seriously, this was not your average penguin or seal. This thing was about 8 feet long, covered in weird, protruding bones, and had a jaw that could retract. American archaeologists were exploring near an underground lake when they found this weird creature. The scientists were completely baffled. This creature did not look like anything they had ever seen before. They were scratching their heads, trying to figure out what it eats, where it came from, and how it fits into the tree of life. And it is not just this creature that was fascinating in this discovery. An underground lake. Do you remember what we told you where scientists found this creature? They found it near an underground lake. You see, Antarctica has about 400 of these underground lakes. Now, you might be wondering how water stays liquid under all that ice in a place like Antarctica. Well, it is made possible due to the pressure and heat from the Earth's core. The pressure keeps the water from freezing, even when it is super cold, and a bit of geothermal heat helps too. This was not the only underground lake explored by the scientists. In 2013, some researchers drilled about 2,300 feet into the Ross Glacier and found another underground lake. They took water samples and found cold-resistant bacteria that were completely new to science. These tiny critters live in total darkness, in freezing temperatures, and still thrive. It is like they have superpowers. Whenever a new underground lake is found, it leads scientists to new species of bacteria and microorganisms. Other than living creatures, scientists have also found fossilized remains of dead animals, ancient fossils. Did you know that millions of years ago, Antarctica was a much warmer place? In fact, some scientists believe it was once a jungle full of life. Over the years, scientists have unearthed numerous fossils that tell the story of this lost world. One of the most significant discoveries in Antarctica is the fossilized remains of dinosaurs. In the early 1990s, paleontologists discovered fossils of a plant-eating dinosaur called Cryolophosaurus on Mount Kirkpatrick. This dinosaur, which lived about 190 million years ago during the early Jurassic period, had a distinctive crest on its head, which is how it earned its nickname Elvosaurus. Cryolophosaurus was one of the top predators of its time, and its discovery showed the scientists what types of dinosaurs roamed Antarctica when it was much warmer. Another fascinating find is the fossil of Antarctopelta, which is a type of armored dinosaur known as an ankylosaur. Discovered on James Ross Island, this dinosaur lived about 70 million years ago during the late Cretaceous period. Antarctopelta had bony plates covering its body and a club-like tail, which it likely used for defense against predators. After its discovery, it was clear that even 70 million years ago, Antarctica was still warm. Other than dinosaurs, scientists have also found fossils of ancient marine reptiles. One of the most amazing discoveries is that of Kronosaurus, which is a massive pliosaur that lived around 100 million years ago. Pliosaurs were marine reptiles with powerful jaws and flippers. The fossils of Kronosaurus were found on the Antarctic Peninsula, which means it dominated that particular region. Antarctica has also yielded fossils of ancient amphibians. In 2011, paleontologists discovered the fossilized remains of a large amphibian called Koolasuchus. This creature, which lived about 120 million years ago, was similar to modern-day salamanders, but much larger. It would reach lengths of up to 15 feet. Koolasuchus lived in rivers and lakes, and its discovery tells us that Antarctica had a more temperate climate during the early Cretaceous period, with many freshwater ecosystems. One of the oldest fossils found in Antarctica belongs to the genus Glossopteris, which is a type of seed fern that thrived around 250 million years ago during the Permian period. The presence of Glossopteris fossils across various southern continents provided early evidence for the theory of continental drift. as these plants once formed part of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana. How fascinating is all this evidence? Just by looking at some preserved and fossilized parts of animals, we can tell the history of our home planet. Other than the remains of animals, did you know scientists also discovered ancient human skulls? Elongated skulls. Let's say you find a skull that is long and narrow. The last thing you would expect it to be is a human skull, right? But if you were a Peruvian archaeologist in the 1920s, your guess would have been wrong. In the 1920s, a Peruvian archaeologist named Julio Tello was exploring the Paracas region of Peru. He found a bunch of strange, elongated skulls buried in the Paracas Peninsula. Turns out these were actual human skulls. These skulls belonged to the Paracas culture, which existed around 800 BCE to 100 BCE. It is pretty wild to think about how different their world was from ours. So why were these skulls the way that they were? At first glance, they might make you think of aliens or some lost species of humans, but the reality is both fascinating and more down to earth. The Paracas skulls are way different from regular human skulls. Some are up to 25% larger. Naturally, this started a ton of theories and speculations. Some people even thought they were evidence of extraterrestrial life or strange genetic mutations. However, the most accepted explanation is cranial deformation, also known as head binding. This practice involved binding the heads of infants with cloth or wooden boards, shaping their skulls as they grew. It sounds kind of bizarre, but it was actually pretty common in several ancient cultures, not just in Peru. The Maya in Central America, the Huns in Europe, and even some African tribes did it too. Why would anyone do this? Well, for the Paracas people and other cultures, an elongated skull was a sign of nobility, beauty, or high social status. It set the elite apart from the common folk. They might have also believed that these skulls gave people special spiritual or intellectual abilities. The Paracas skulls are not the only elongated skulls out there. In Bavaria, Germany, archaeologists have found similar skulls from the early medieval period. These were likely the result of head binding by the Huns and other nomadic tribes. They wanted to stand out, just like the Paracas people did. Even in Russia and Ukraine, similar skulls have been discovered. This practice was surprisingly widespread. Over in Central Africa, the Mangbetu people practiced head binding well into the 20th century. For them, it was a symbol of beauty and intelligence. Now the discoveries did not stop at these continents. In 2014, scientists made a jaw-dropping discovery in Antarctica. They found 3 elongated skulls. These were the first human remains ever found on the icy continent, and they started a wave of curiosity and speculation. What made this find even more incredible was that these skulls looked almost identical to elongated skulls found in far-off places like Egypt and Peru. This is how scientists discovered there used to be some kind of a hidden link between ancient civilizations that were worlds apart. We don't know that link yet, but we do know that it existed. And this is how we also got to know that people of ancient civilization also visited this icy desert. While these skulls were from a much more recent era, something else was found that was so old that it got turned into a stone. Petrified Animal. In 2009, scientists made a stunning discovery in the icy expanse of Antarctica. The fossilized remains of a unique creature hidden in the ice for millions of years. This ancient animal was roughly the size of a modern cat. Scientists found out that it lived more than 250 million years ago, and it was an egg-laying animal and a distant relative of modern mammals. It is amazing to think that such a small, cat-sized creature once roamed the landscapes of what is now the coldest place on Earth. Back then, Antarctica was not the icy, barren land we see today. Instead, it was part of the supercontinent Pangaea, which used to be this massive landmass that included nearly all the Earth's land areas. During this period, Antarctica was much warmer and hosted a variety of life forms, including this peculiar egg-laying mammal relative. Scientists believe that this ancient creature migrated from Antarctica to what is now southern Africa. This migration was made possible by the changing climate and the shifting continents during a period of global warming. As Pangaea began to break apart, animals could move between regions that are now separated by vast oceans. And now the strangest thing found in the whole of Antarctica: dry valleys. Did you know there exist some dry valleys in Antarctica? These are located within the McMurdo Dry Valleys region, and are one of the most extreme and unique environments on Earth. These valleys, which are situated on the coast of Victoria Land, west of McMurdo Sound, are remarkable because they don't have any snow and ice cover. The dry valleys spread over around 4,800 square kilometers of area, which means they are the largest ice-free region in Antarctica. The three primary valleys are Taylor Valley, Wright Valley, and Victoria Valley. These valleys are surrounded by mountains that block the flow of ice from the East Antarctic ice sheet and create a unique polar desert environment. Even though they are present in one of the coldest places on Earth, the dry valleys receive very little precipitation. The region gets just a few centimeters of snowfall per year. This arid condition is why they are referred to as dry. One of the most fascinating features of the dry valleys is their extreme aridity and the katabatic winds that sweep through them. These winds, which can reach speeds of up to 200 kilometers per hour, are driven by the force of cold, dense air that descends from the high interior of the continent. As the air descends, it heats up through compression and creates the driest and windiest conditions on Earth. These katabatic winds are so powerful that they can evaporate any moisture, which is why no snow or ice has been able to accumulate here. The dry valleys are also home to some of the most extreme and resilient forms of life on the planet. Microbial life thrives in this harsh environment, particularly in the soils and in the perennially ice-covered lakes such as Lake Vita, Lake Vanda, and Lake Bonney. These microbes have adapted to survive in conditions of extreme cold, dryness, and high salinity. For example, in Lake Vita, which has a thick ice cover and super salty water, microbial life exists even though the lake is devoid of oxygen and remains frozen year-round. Another incredible feature of the dry valleys is blood falls. Remember the red waterfall we talked about in the beginning? Yes, that very same waterfall is found in one of these dry valleys. The dry valleys are also of significant scientific interest due to their similarity to the conditions on Mars. The barren, rocky landscape and extreme conditions make them an excellent analog for the Martian surface. In fact, scientists study the dry valleys to understand how life might survive on Mars and to test technologies for future Mars missions. Despite the harsh conditions, the dry valleys have a rich geological history. The valleys contain a variety of geological formations, including ancient lake beds, fossilized river channels, and unique mineral deposits. These formations provide valuable insights into the climatic and environmental changes that have occurred over millions of years. One of the most studied areas is the McMurdo Dry Valleys long-term ecological research site, which was established in 1993. This program focuses on understanding the ecological processes and biodiversity in this extreme environment. Researchers monitor everything from soil chemistry and hydrology to microbial diversity and ecosystem dynamics. The data collected helps scientists understand how ecosystems function in extreme conditions and how they might respond to climate change. These were just 10 of the weird things found in the huge, icy land of Antarctica. With so much of it still unexplored, who knows what other strange and amazing stuff is waiting to be discovered. If you want more mysteries uncovered, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel, because we have got a lot more of this. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.